So now we need to switch things. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, it's a great pleasure being here today. We in Serbia, we traditionally have an excessive amount of ambition, enthusiasm, probably talents, and also we traditionally have a lack of resources to do all of this, such as money, technology, and especially time. Speaking of which, I'll try to squeeze this rather big presentation in given 20 minutes, and so let's do so. Okay. We also in Serbia have as we would say, a thing for aviation. So how should I say? Here on this slide, you can see some of the. I need to see what I'm talking about. So forgive me for showing you my back. So we here can see some of the important events in the history of Serbian aviation, even in the 19th century, such as first people trying to fly over here from 1841 onwards, and we have the how should I say, first significant event in aviation as we see it today. In 1910, Ivan Saric made the first aircraft flight, and then we had Mihailo Merčep also doing several flights on a self-made airplane, having in mind that we record in 1903 as the year of aviation beginning. In a modern sense, it's kind of fast. So these are the, with respect to Serbian military, these are some important dates when we have established from 1893 first military unit related to aviation, and then from 1912 we have celebrated our 100 years anniversary of our aviation some years ago. So in 1912 the Kingdom of Serbia has established the Air Force Command, and then of course we have been one of the pioneers of combat use of at that time very modern thing called aviation. Also having this first recognized military casualty in one of the reconnaissance flight over Skadar city seas in First Balkan War. The Kingdom of Yugoslavia also had a great enthusiasm for aviation and had invested a significant amount of money in building this industry. And this effort has, how should I say, for that time and for the size of that country, resulting in some very potent industry before the World War II, and some how to say, 6 operating factories, all the key technologies implemented in country, and some very modern aircraft such as a later generation fighter, IK-3, and the later generation bombers, very up to date and similar in characteristics with the world leading class of these aircrafts at that time. After World War II, Yugoslavia was also investing very heavily in aviation and managing to follow dramatic changing technologies which we all know have happened in this field during the 20th century. And all of the industry was dispersed all over Yugoslavia, but the central R&D institutions have always been in Serbia. And what we have, the industrial part, which was always how should I say, placed in Serbia, is the part which was building training piston engine aircrafts and other accompanying aircrafts. The School of Research and Development and Design of Aircrafts was also very much developed in Yugoslavia, and from that time these are some of the biggest achievements in aviation, such as G2, Jastreb, Orao, Super Galeb, the platforms that we are still working on today, and a bit of the upgrade plans for these platforms will be shown later on. This was the dream and the peak and the top of the ambition of that industry, and that was supposed to be a 4th generation fighter, and that of course did not take off, has not been materialized, but the investment which was made in the late 80s in the R&D capacities, if not other things, is still something that we are very much using today in a military technical institute. Now, research and development, we will later on say a little bit more about the whole aerospace industry structure in Serbia. It used to be very much centralized, and Military Technical Institute was responsible for all the development. Now it's a still very potent institution, and this institution is our, how to say, hub, which is organizing and concentrating all other effort of all others into achieving the goals which Ministry of Defense is placing in front of them, and the goals are quite high, as you will see further on. Military Technical Institute has all the necessary laboratories for computation, for design, but also even more importantly for testing. We have 5 wind tunnels, including the trisonic tunnel, in which we can test the not only aviation structures, but also the missiles and very fast flying objects such as ammunition. And we also have all other laboratories which are needed to design, test, and introduce an aircraft into service. Also, the Military Technical Institute is not the only one. There are also some very potent R&D institutions we will mention, which are dispersed all over the industry, but we will mention only one more, which is in University of Belgrade, in mechanical faculty. There is a Institute for Aviation, which is also a very potent institution, and you can see here some of their projects. Now, current aviation modernization projects for Serbian Armed Forces. Here we will talk about 3. The main theme is plans for upgrades and for existing platforms. And we will here address 3 typical sets. The first one is the upgrade projects which are currently being carried on for Serbian Armed Forces and for Ministry of Defense. Then the projects which have been carried on by what we call a governmental or government-owned part of the industry, and the institutions which are inside the MOD, such as Military Technical Institute, which are predominantly for global market. And the third ones, which the industry is doing independently, especially the small enterprises, which are doing independently, also predominantly for global market. Of course, Ministry of Defense is keeping a close watch on what is happening, and we hope that some of these independently built and developed projects will have some, certainly they will have some use also for military of Serbia when the time comes. So here we have Alasta was and is one of the most important current projects, and based on this aircraft, on this project we have, how should I say, revamp the R&D and or I would say a major R&D projects capabilities and industry to wrap up a complete aircraft project, avionics, and so on and so forth. And this project is still very much going on. You will see what is happening related to this aircraft on the following slides. And it has been introduced into military of Serbia after a number of upgrades, and also it has been introduced to some Middle East countries, and have seen a lot of flying and even combat actions in a very, how should I say, tough environment. Here are the 3 major platforms built at those time of a peak of Yugoslav aerospace industry, which are still the mainstream of and carrying the biggest workload of Serbian Armed Forces, which are currently being upgraded. G4 is a training aircraft on which we are quite some time now we have an upgrade project for this aircraft. And what has happened recently is that this upgrade project has been integrated in the upgrade project of ORAO, and the priorities has been changed, and we will see ORAO will probably come out first and the G4 will follow. Of course, the avionics and weapon systems is the prime goal of upgrade. ORAO is the most important carrier of what ground attack missions and reconnaissance missions for Serbian Air Force. And we are currently carrying a rather ambitious upgrade project, which involves avionics. Here we have a list of things which are going to be implemented, or subsystems which are going to be implemented in the aircraft. The upgrade package consists of modern avionics, modern subsystems for protection, and most importantly, new weapon systems, new especially guided weapons, which are being developed also for Serbian armed forces. On this video, you can see some of these weapons attached. Those weapons are TV and infrared guided missiles and laser guided missiles. The following one is the upgrade package for Gazelle helicopter, and it includes also new avionics, new observation and attack navigation system, and definitely the prime goal of this upgrade is these missiles that you can see here on the video, and the equipment to use them. This should put this platform, which have been intensively used and in many war affairs that we have had. Unfortunately, recently, it will boost the capacities greatly with the by increasing the range of the weapons introduced, and by implementing the possibility for non-line of sight engagement, which will greatly increase the survivability of this aircraft, together with the possibility to knock out the latest armored combat vehicles and other targets. Then we have several unmanned area vehicle projects. Vrabac is the smallest one. Pegas is a bigger tactical one, tactical range UAV, and also what is currently on the agenda is weaponizing, and there are also a couple of weapons which are being built for this UAV. UAV market, as you know, and also weapons for UAV is growing globally, so we expect good results from these projects, both for military in Serbia and for exports. This is the video of all of these, both of these UAVs. So Pegasus hand-launched, 10-kilometer range, 10-kilometer endurance, 1.2 hours. And the, Vrabac is 10-kilometer range and 10-kilometer and 1.2 hours endurance. And the Pegasus is a bit of a traditional aircraft concept, being launched, taking off and landing on a runway or grass runway, and carrying a capable kit of surveillance equipment, and also will be carrying these weapons that you can see in this video. Now, these are current projects for global market involving both institutions within MOD and governmental producers. SOVA is an aircraft based on UTVA 75 and UTVA 96, which is more in category of touristic aviation and general purpose aviation, for which there is a demand on global market, and one of the most important projects currently on UTVA factory. And of course, the Military Technical Institute is involved in this project. Now, this is the description of UTVA 96. Then several LASTA-related projects. First, there is a weaponized LASTA that will increase the level of missions, the number of missions that LASTA could do, especially for training purposes, to train pilots in what we call RGB, which is rocketing, bombing, and machine gunning. And a couple of weapon pods are being developed for this aircraft. Then turboprop LASTA, which would then greatly increase the capabilities of this aircraft by introduction of the new, much more lighter and much more potent engine. These are the turboprop LASTA pictures. Kobats was also a project for global market, which was supposed to put UTVA and Serbian defense industry in the category of turboprop advanced trainers and light attack aircrafts. What is important for us, that all of these technologies out of which the aircrafts, especially combat aircrafts, are being made, are are migrating from commercial projects to military projects, and we want to have this happening and to continue this happening, because we, as we have said at the beginning of this presentation, we traditionally lack of resources, so we want to share the resources that the industry has for market-related projects with the resources of Serbian military to get the needed equipment for Serbian military in the end, and to have a capable and potent defense industry. So these are all the weapons that the Kobac is capable of carrying. This is a project also done for some customers. There was a number of analyses to make a proper counterinsurgency aircraft, which will go beyond the category of the globally very much present aircrafts in this field, which are primarily built for training and with very, how should I say, potent avionics, but not actually built for counterinsurgency missions with respect to payload and loitering capabilities. Then there was also a number of these we have seen also on the Middle East market, agricultural aircraft, which does have the quite a bit of carrying capabilities and very large loitering time, but they are then again not built for combat, so they are very, how should I say, does not have a needed maneuvering capabilities for modern combat. So this was one of the five worked out concepts aircraft with a pusher propeller, which was supposed to have the Mi-17 engine and twin 30mm guns and so on and so forth. Then we have a project which was successfully implemented recently to upgrade medium-sized helicopters with attack navigation system and various armament, side-mounted machine guns with the heavy machine guns with fire control system, which is a unique thing in the world of aviation, and then various guided and non-guided weapons, which were successfully tested and have seen quite a lot of combat recently. Age 145 will be explained in details in the following presentation. What we are currently working on is the weaponization package or Serbian weapon package that should be integrated in this Age Force attack navigation system of the helicopter. We are starting with non-guided weapons, weapon pods, and we'll end up with some of Serbian guided weapons, some of these that you have seen on previous presentations. And then there are other current projects for global market which are normally coming for the Serbian SMEs, and they are quite an interesting and very potent a breed, I would say, of aircraft enthusiasts, not only enthusiasts in aviation, but also in technologies, and they are showing quite a bit of result now, and the Ministry of Defense is keeping a close eye on them, and these projects will be, some of these will be, how to say, used in our military. This is, for example, a drone which will be able to carry something like about a 100 kilo payload. This is the Hornet unmanned attack helicopter. This footage is from recent Abu Dhabi exhibition, UMEX. Company EDEPRO is building this helicopter with Yugo import. And also the weapon system, which is also very interesting, how should I say, would be a very interesting addition to the weapon systems for UAVs in general. This is not aviation. And then there is a number of aircraft which are being built also by the Serbian SMEs for global market in the category of unmanned aerial vehicles and also ultralight aviation, both aircrafts and helicopters. Now, these are the Serbian aerospace capacities for production cooperation. These are the general figures that we have for aerospace industry in general, of more than 4,000 employees, 150 million euro in revenues, capable of designing and production of general aviation and military aircraft for domestic and international use. Aerospace companies are developing tooling also. This is very important, tooling and other assets for the aircraft production, and they are selling those for big players also. And of course, what we said, we have an excessive amount of talents, which is good for us. And those talents that we have in aviation field are have quite good remarks globally. for everything that they do. And of course, we do have, we think, a good to be upgraded also with the recent technologies, but very good and sound education system which can produce these engineers, technologists, pilots for production and use of modern aircrafts. Now, these are the most important capabilities and references, all the aircraft that we have already listed, which are being designed and produced. Various guided and unguided weapons and pods, attack navigation systems, avionics, assembly, sub-assemblies, components and parts for both military and civilian aircrafts, overhauls of aircrafts and especially engines, production of engine parts, production of wide range of aircraft structures of both aluminum and composites, aircraft design according to customer technical requirements. You have seen some of these in the previous presentation. Design and manufacture special tools, production guidance, and components, instruments, and equipment. Here we have some of the videos of all of this equipment for all of this. Here we have also hydraulics, pneumatics for aviation building. Various, especially in these SME category companies which are capable of building composite structures. Now, strategy. Ministry of Defense of Serbia has designed a strategy to develop a complete defense technology and industrial base of Republic of Serbia, which is military related or could be of interest for military. And this is how it should look like after the transition is done. In the center we have MOD, of course, and a number of institutions which are within MOD and military of Serbia, including all of these testing institutions, including repair institutions, including Military Technical Institute, and others which are controlling to military standards all of this, the other industry. Then we have this circle here, which is showing the bulk of the industry, and currently is primarily government-owned factories, which are grouped in three most important clusters: vehicle and heavy weapon system clusters, ammunition cluster, and aerospace and optoelectronics and electronics cluster. Then we have a number of companies which are registered as a producers of armament and defense equipment. Any of the company, and this is the legal obligation of any of the company who wants to produce, research, to do research, development, and production of defense-related material and equipment, has to be registered. And this is the database that Ministry of Defense is keeping. We are authorizing them, certifying their technologies, and giving them appropriate license, and they are registered as producers. Here we also have a number of companies which are supporting this, or which will be supporting this biggest aerospace, this aerospace cluster. And then we have a number of companies. Currently there are something like 55 of these, 12 of these. And there is about 200 of these, which are all the other carriers of necessary technologies and companies which are building components and giving other services to the rest of the defense industry. Now, with respect to aviation, this is, how should I say, a general sketch of this aerospace complex or cluster, in which we have a number of Serbian defense industrial groups which are owned by government of Serbia, most important state-owned institutions, military institutions, and a number. Here we have 22 companies which we have currently registered as the potential supplier of these bigger players in the aerospace industry. And here you have some of the available technologies with some of these companies, both government and privately owned. We have also designed what we call a technology roadmap in some 13 general areas and 127 sub-areas, which we would like to see growing in Serbia, combining governmental efforts and the efforts of the industry itself. And a number of those is related to aviation. And then strategies for or main strategic objectives for MOD or for military part of the industry is the expansion and strengthening of technological base, new design technologies, new production technologies, expansion and strengthening of MRO capabilities. The project that we will just discuss now is the keystone of this part of strategy, to have a capable MRO institution which will be globally recognized, and also the Airbus is, how should I say, sub-supplier. And then for Serbian civil aviation is many of the activities which needs to be achieved by predominantly these SMEs, so that they can be registered as per ISA standards and being included also in general, how to say, global market related to aviation, and also to grow their capabilities to be of, to achieve this task which the Ministry of Defense will put in front of them. I think it's the last one. Yes, thank you so much.
Mr. Miloradovic, thank you for this insightful presentation of the capabilities of the Serbian defense industry and R&D. I want to wish everybody a warm welcome again the second day. We have 280 people registered today. Thank you again for coming. Yesterday we had 473. Let me kick off with you, Mr. Miloradovic. And I was, by courtesy of Airbus, visited Doneworth production facility of the Airbus helicopters, and there were some quite interesting details requiring, considering the procurement process, which Luftwaffe confirmed that they had a fascinatingly quick 2 years from signing of the contract, the initial intent, to basically delivery. We will have a similarly quick delivery, and we will also have, which was a news item yesterday, add-on to the H-Force set with our locally developed weapons, unguided weapons. So can you comment where the entire process of acquisition is now? What are the phases that have been achieved? And in more detail about this add-on of ours.
Yeah, the speed that we were just saying is a relative thing. It depends on, it's very fast as per, probably as per producer standards. Sorry, it's very fast, yes, it's very fast as per producer standards, but it's definitely not fast enough for the user standards and expectations, so we would like this to have those aircrafts as soon as possible, meaning even before. But yes, we are happy with the progress of production, and we are fulfilling our obligations towards Airbus, and we are expecting to see this initial presentation of our aircrafts being built in a couple of months, and that is a part of our agreement or our contract that the Airbus will take care of integration of our weapon systems into H-145s. There are some weapon pods which have been built for this purpose. Some have already been tested and in production for quite some time now. There are some of those are we had a bit of a dilemma whether to use the already existing pods which are with a less how should I say, less effective weapons, or to make a new one. So we have opted for the other options. So we will have an interesting product with respect to weapon pods, and integrated on H-145. This is currently ongoing, and we have a bit of also a steep plan of when the both weapons should be integrated on H-145 and tested. The following step is guided weapons that you have seen, and that will be later on when the aircrafts are in service in Serbia.
And what is the planned strategy of use of the helicopters?
These aircrafts are helicopters. Yeah, these helicopters are there are two, I would say, two basic versions that the MOD is procuring. One is the search and rescue helicopter, and the others are weaponized, or what we say, how we would say, combat helicopters, equipped with the proper equipment for both protection and the how to say, aiming, some very modern equipment to deploy weapons And they would also be used by our special forces to support them in their missions, to both carry the special forces teams into their mission and to support them with the onboard weapons.
One of also fascinating aspects of my visit was talking to Luftwaffe pilots who didn't order their Special Operation Forces version with the H-Force, and they are still developing their combat strategies with their special forces, and they said that they're going to watch Serbia's experiences with the H-Force and maybe order their own version. So that was quite interesting for me to hear from.
Yes, you see, this is the well, for a smaller customer such as Serbia, there is always a dilemma of, and I mean, look, even for the biggest players, how to use your assets, how to use your money basically, is always a dilemma, a challenging thing in how to find the optimum. Serbia is unfortunately in this how should I say, situation that we have a great need for everything and all kind of capabilities, and sometimes we have to be progressive and aggressive. And the probably bigger nations such as, and of course the Luftwaffe, they have, we assume, much bigger, broader assets to fulfill their various missions, and we'll have to, how should I say, squeeze as they say, do more with less, and to, anyway, we do have this intention to have most of our platforms being capable of doing multi-missions, various missions, and capable of doing various things. There is always a dilemma whether this is wise or not. We think it is, and our combat experience has proven that this is normally the case, which the warfighters will be faced, that these are situations that they will be facing, and this is what what we should give them. And if the others, the bigger, should learn from us, good, they are welcome to do so.
Yeah, it was quite interesting that Luftwaffe is waiting for Serbia's experiences. So, Mr. General, yesterday we had also a news item that Moma Stanilovic will see better days, because this is not just a procurement deal for helicopters alone. This is a wider industrial cooperation deal. Can you elaborate more on Moma Stanilovic's certification for the maintenance of Gazelle helicopters, and what are the plans in that arena?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I actually prepared the presentation to express more details on the project H145, although the part of this presentation has already been addressed through your questions. But if I may have my presentation, please. Yeah. As was already published in the October 2016, the government of Serbia signed the high-level memorandum of understanding with the Airbus Group in order to establish the framework for the long-term cooperation. As a first tangible outcome of this memorandum, in December 2016, the contract on the procurement of the 9 helicopters H145M has been signed. 6 of them are dedicated to the Serbian Armed Forces, and 3 of them to the Ministry of the Interior. Delivery schedule is that actually the first batch will be delivered 24 months after the signature, meaning that the first helicopter is coming at December this year. One of the overarching goals in designing the memorandum was actually, as a part of our defense industrial strategy, is to use these procurement programs to expand and to re-establish, to be quite honest, some of the defense industrial basis capabilities in Serbia. That means that a significant part of this contract was dedicated to the industrial cooperation. We already addressed the missions of which can be carried out by this platform. What we select through the contract based on the requirements of the Serbian Armed Forces, basically the equipment which allow us to have at least 4 possible configuration of helicopters for troop transport, armed scout version, cargo transport, and medevac transport. The main characteristics of platform already been addressed, but I would like just to stress one which wasn't mentioned before. This is advanced glass cockpit called helionics, which is a state-of-art digital avionics with the 4-axis digital autopilot as a very, very advanced capability. H4's package for the armament is already been addressed, and I would like just to add that a very powerful cell protection system is already been procured as a part of the equipment. What is the very well known about this platform, but just to re-emphasize that this multi-role capability to very easily transform from one mission to other, we were not the first customer for that, and it's already known that, for example, a very similar platform has been delivered in the 400 pieces to the US Army. It's very difficult to win this battle on the US market among the domestic producers. And also the German armed forces already procured 15 platforms before we signed this contract. That I'm coming to the industrial cooperation as a major part of my presentation. We had 3 major goals in this project: to improve MoMA capabilities in terms of the maintenance and spare parts production, to support maintenance of the Gazella fleets, which we are flying, and we will flying this for many, many years, hopefully. Also, the significant part of this contract is the transfer of technology for maintenance of the new platform, H145, and of course, we use this opportunity also to ask our partners from Airbus to give us more sourcing opportunities for engagement of Serbian industry and procurement, through procurement our goods and services as some kind of the reciprocity in this contract. Most of you are familiar with the MoMA Stanojević overhauling plant, but just to remind you that this facility has very broad portfolio of the maintenance in terms of the platform which they are maintaining, and including the old Soviet platforms. But we all know the story about difficulties in 90s, including the bombing and the physical destruction of this capability, and all other things which actually lead us to the situation when some of the tasks hasn't been, the MoMA hasn't been able to conduct anymore. Now we are focused through these different projects to re-establish MoMA capacity to be again the premier facility for maintenance, repair, and overhauling of the air platforms, but also air defense platforms. Just to remind you that MoMA already has production capacity, which wasn't the core business from the very beginning, but due to all these conditions during the 90s, we were obliged to keep some level of operational availability of the fleet, including the Gazella fleets. That's why the MoMA succeed, for example, to produce more than 600 different pieces of spare parts from the rubber material for Gazella helicopters. Now we are coming to the contract and what is the actually envisaged through industrial cooperation plan in the contract. There are 7 projects inside of this plan. First was dedicated to the certification of MoMA as a producer of the spare parts for the Gazellas, meaning they already produce, but somebody should be authorized this production. Second project is dedicated to the transfer production documentation for the spare parts which are not produced yet in MoMA. Third project is to transfer the maintenance documentation from the Airbus to MoMA for some specific task which MoMA hasn't relevant documentation for that. Project 4 is the most important, and he is dedicated to certification of MoMA as a regional maintenance center for the Gazella type of helicopters. Project 5 is the natural extension project of 4, is to promote together the MoMA capacity on the after-sales market. And project number 6 is to the new platform, transfer of technology for the maintenance and repair of the H145M. And project 7 is the sourcing opportunity in the wider context. We would like to have Airbus involvement to engage Serbian industry with procurement of goods and services, and of course, procurement of the goods and services delivered by the MoMA, which was achieved through the previous projects. There is very clear work share in this partnership. Airbus responsibilities is to deliver documentation, test equipment, and special production machines, to train the MoMA personnel, and of course, to through expert support to guide us in achieving the necessary standards and certifications. Our responsibility is to improve the facility for the maintenance, different workshops, hangars, and so on. Of course, to provide qualified personnel for this task, including for the advanced training, and to improve the quality management system, and to reach the EN 9100 certificate. What are the recent activities? We already, meaning the Airbus helicopters, conducted already few pre-audits on the projects number 1, 2, and 4, and based on these reports, we developed the action plan, and currently this action plan is in progress. There are, as you can imagine, a lot of the corrective actions which should be taken. On the other hand, apart from the Ministry of Defense, the government of Republika Serbia, recognizing the importance of this project, supported on very concrete and tangible way the improvement of the MoMA's capacity. It was the €4 million investment program from the April 2017, which helped MoMA to start modernization of the IT networks in order to better handle all documentation relevant for maintenance and repair, and also for acquisition of the new equipment for different laboratories, and also start the major construction work on the new paint shop and the surface protection facility. We expecting that through both channels, through MOD budget, but also with new government investment program, to continue with other projects which already been identified through pre-audit reports from the Airbus helicopter. Apart from the fact that we need this project to sustain a fleet of the Gazellas on the long term for our armed forces, I would like just to remind you that we currently have more than 40 pieces of Gazella helicopter, and they will still be in service for a while. We need that there are also commercial potential for this facility, bearing in mind that there is currently only 4 maintenance repair centers certified by Airbus helicopters for the civilian version of the Gazellas, and that we have more than still active 390 helicopters in military market and more than 80 on the civil market. Our objective is to become part of this certifying facility. To conclude, the main objectives and benefit from this procurement and industrial cooperation package from the military side, this is for sure improving the vertical lift capabilities with new multi-role helicopter, but also we provide a long-term and life cycle support through all this necessary technology transfer for MoMA to properly maintain these helicopters. And of course, we provide long-term sustainability for the Gazella's fleet of the helicopters. From the industrial point of view, this kind of the partnership will bring us the capacity on the regional basis to be able to provide our services, and also through this certification process of the spare part production, MoMA will be able to be part finally of the Airbus supply chain. And not only MoMA, we think that through this third channel, new sourcing opportunities for our airspace industry, also presented here, we think that we can be we can build industrial partnership with Airbus on the much broader scale. What are the expectations and challenges? Of course, we believe, both sides, of course, that process is very difficult, but is still viable. Certification of the spare parts production could be more challenging than expected, and also with the risk that there is the limited commercial interest for this kind of the spare parts. What we realized that basically core business of MoMA was the maintenance, not the production. Production was was imposed because of the fact that there were no approach to the OEMs during the 90s, and that the way how we produce these spare parts and the standards now required by Airbus didn't match exactly, and that's why we need more effort to reach these standards. And to conclude, process will be longer and more demanding than previously perceived, but both sides strongly believe in the final outcome, which is favorable, and the level of commitments both sides is really, really high. Thank you.
Now this is what you call an answer on a panel question. Thank you. Thank you for the MOD for being so transparent and so insightful. We really appreciate that. Mr. Bambichon, the H145M is actually an evolution of a civilian platform. When I was in Donnerworth, Luftwaffe is bragging about a spectacular dispatch reliability of 90% plus. Other squadrons are fighting, pilots from other squadrons are fighting to get in the 63 wing to fly more. Can you elaborate on the connection with the civilian platform regarding the maintenance, maintainability, and what are your promises to your client and the Air Force of this process going forward?
As you said, 145M is let's say the brother of the 145 civilian version. They are sharing a maximum of parts. These two helicopters are very comparable. The M version has significantly the capability to be armed. That's the main point. And today, the reliability of the 145, even in the civilian or in the military world, has been proven. We have, as you said, General, more than 400 Lakotas, which are the military US version of the 145, which are flying. And the degree of satisfaction of the customer is really, really high. They are thinking today of maybe some additional helicopters. The benefit of the 145M in terms of maintenance, we are here within a modern aircraft, and the maintenance of the aircraft is done with a lot of equipments which make surveillance of different parts of the helicopter. So the anticipation for maintenance is there, and it's something which is very important to guarantee the efficiency and the reliability and the operational side of the helicopter. In addition, we have brought the H-Force system within this helicopter, and H-Force is a very evolutive concept. It starts with just some wirings and computers in the helicopter to allow the helicopter to be then equipped with different options from 1 to 3. And the basic one will be option 1, which is only ballistic shooting. The option 2 will go for ballistic shooting also, guided through an electro-optical system. And the number 3 will allow to go to guided weapons. So for our customers, we have a very flexible system. As soon as the helicopter is option 0 capable, going to 1, 2, or 3 later on will be feasible. So this gives a lot of flexibility. On top of this, the helicopter itself is, let's say, if we can make some comparison, it's kind of Jeep for aerial work or for operators. It's a very rough machine. It's something which is very flexible in terms of cabin arrangement, very easily reconfigurable. So it's really a military dedicated aircraft, very, very well tuned for these operations.
And what is Luftwaffe commenting on their experiences, if you can share so far? Luftwaffe's comments on their experiences so far.
It's very difficult to give testimonies from the Luftwaffe, as their major mission will be special forces. And as you know, when you are talking of special forces, it's very difficult to get feedback. However, even if we don't know what the exact role of the helicopter, we can imagine it. We have no direct feedback on the helicopter, except that the first comments on the platform itself, on the level of reliability of the helicopter, is very, very high and very, very good.
So you wouldn't comment on the percentage of the dispatch reliability of the helicopter is upwards of 90%?
It's around 90%, yes, availability rate. This is the result of different factors. First of all, as I said previously, the helicopter is itself reliable. Secondly, the maintenance program of the helicopter is quite light, and the anticipation which is given by systems embarked in the helicopter to record, to kind of health and usage monitoring systems give a lot of reliability to the helicopter as soon as you can anticipate the troubleshooting.
Thank you. Cesar, because this panel is also conceived as to encompass the region as well. What do you see as your prospects for the region in the vertical transport category and attack helicopters maybe? We will have gentlemen from Croatia and Bosnia. So what are your assessment of the region and its potential for new platforms in helicopter arena?
Okay, I will not comment much about the merits of the helicopter. The General Major Cernich and Patrick already said basically everything about the helicopter. So in terms of strategic importance, not only for Serbia, but for the region, the main advantage of the 145, it was mentioned before by the General Cernich, the multi-role capability that with one platform you can fulfill and deliver many missions is extremely appreciated in Southeastern Europe countries, because in our countries here we cannot buy too many helicopters for too many missions. So it means that we have to make a smart usage of the budget. So it's not possible today buy dedicated helicopters for all and every mission we are talking about, and therefore the 145 can match the needs of most of the countries we are talking about in Serbia for sure, and Serbia is already proving that, but in the surrounding countries. So in terms of end user mission is very developed and fit for that. In terms of life cycle cost is supporting the budget availability of the countries. They don't need to send the helicopters far away. They can keep that in the region. They can maintain that in the region, and a very affordable cost, because compared to other technology from the East, the 145 can deliver a life cycle cost that can be 30–40% lower, which is a significant save for the military budgets. And on top of that, the fact that MoMA in the case of the Castle, but is developing maintenance capabilities. This can be also an important factor for the region, because other countries can realize that they can use MoMA and they can use Serbia for some maintenance activities that might be common sense, cheaper than following other alternatives. So we do believe, and this is what we are trying to develop, that this platform can be a new standard for the region for the coming 30, 40 years.
Thank you, Cesar. So we're moving on to the region. Mr. Igor Tabak, can you overview the situation in Croatia regarding the latest acquisition of the FMS Kiowa helicopters, and maybe some latest news about your overhaul facilities or going on in there?
Yeah, sure. Good day to all. Well, as you know, Croatia has a bit different approach to things than Serbia. So far, we have been much more reliant on our partnerships. Although with the current defense budget of around, let's say, 650 million euros a year, we try to economize as much as we can, relying, as I said, on partners. On one hand, in most arenas on the EU, in military, mostly on the United States. So far, Croatia has received in way of various donations, I mean through various programs, of around 250 million US dollars worth of donations. Most of that was concentrated on infantry vehicles, those MRAPs. There were over 200 of those, and then more recently some stuff for the Navy and our attack helicopters. Those things, all those things, have proved pretty cost effective. Although it was very important to seize the moment. And that's kind of hard to get in line with the more long-term planning project and planning process as such, as those things appear and then you have to really jump and take the opportunity to be able to profit. Why I'm saying that? Because it makes a big difference if you start talking to a partner about a donation, if they are, let's say, taking equipment out of their operational service. It's very important to be among the first to start talking, because then you have the first pick. That was quite important for us, and that's a lesson we learned with the MRAPs, and also what we used with the Kiowa Warrior helicopters. So in 2013, when the US started really thinking about pulling them out of service, we were actually the first country to speak about acquiring those. That was quite important because of the overall number of helicopters available. Just 45 of them were actually kind of special. They were part of a quota of so-called war replacement machines. Out of Pentagon deliberations, sometimes it's easier to say that you are overhauling a machine drastically, and then you almost purchase a new one and use the old serial numbers and stuff. So we actually managed to get all of our Kiowa Warrior helicopters from that special quota. We got 16 of those with an extremely low number of flight hours being used on them, and with the helicopters on a let's say current equipment level of the US Army. Okay. To be honest, some of the electronic warfare suit elements have been removed, but yeah, okay, that will probably be addressed in further on talks. What's most important, that kind of a package donation was quite cheap. The price range estimate for such a fleet was around $30 million. About half of that was settled through a donation. So what we paid was actually around $15 million, and as is kind of unfortunate, our Ministry of Defense is due to pay DVOT, value-added taxes, so we ended up paying the tax part for the whole amount, amounting to, let's say, about 15 million kunas. So the overall price for the package deal was around less than 200 million kunas, making it 26 million euros, more or less, for 16 machines, with spare parts, with a training package worth alone around $4 million, with the armament package included. And those machines started arriving in Croatia in summer of 2016. At that time, first we got the whole fleet, and then we got a contingent of trainers, private company trainers, certified and approved. So the training of the first batch of our domestic pilots started around the end of 2016. That wasn't so much of a jump because we already use smaller Bell helicopters in our initial training phases, so that was not a completely unfamiliar new machine, although very different in equipment and use. Through the year 2017, first months, we finished the initial training. Through the summer, those helicopters were presented to the public. During the autumn and early winter, the more specialized combat training was performed using the non-guided weaponry, using the guided missile Hellfires. So around December last year, a few months ago, our first batch of pilots was trained to finish, so they got to be instructors. And beginning January this year, we started on our own training the first batch of pilots by our own trainers, instructors. So, I mean, looking at 16 such attack helicopters, yeah, they are, by construction, by design, they are not really the scream that can be, but with the price of around $1.5 million per piece, that's really cheap for a capability that we didn't have for a long time. Also, as Croatia tries to be pretty transparent with its defense budgeting and procurement processes and such, one can see that through the second half of the last year, we procured the Hellfire missiles that will be used further on in future. A few weeks ago, we had the procurement for the Hydra missiles. Both of those deals amount to around altogether 30 million kunas, so reasonably priced. A lot of that purchase is actually training missiles, so not to be afraid, it's not kind of a big up armament of sorts. And yeah, it's a new capability which was not included in our long-term plans. which probably wouldn't be on our overall schedule if the opportunity wasn't really inexpensive. So that's more or less in a nutshell.
Thank you for this insight. Antonio, can you shed some light on sometimes very interesting situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina from the sides of all entities regarding vertical transport, the current situation, and what are your predictions for the future?
Of course, Petar. I will give a small overview as an introduction. In December, it was the 11th anniversary of the formation of the Armed Forces of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the Armed Forces of Bosnia and Herzegovina don't have planes, they have a helicopter-only force. And they are part of the Air Force and Air Defense Brigade, which has 2 helicopter squadrons. One squadron is based at Mahovljani near Banja Luka. It has the former JNA Yugoslav People Army Gazelle utility helicopters and the Mi-8T medium transport helicopters. And the other squadron at Relovac near Sarajevo, it has Mi-8 MTV medium transport helicopters that are acquired during the war from the different sources. And it has old UH-1H Huey American helicopters that you remember still from the Vietnam War. You know? And that squadron is interesting, that has the youngest and the oldest helicopters in the inventory. The oldest, the UH-1, they have something like 45 years old, while Mi-8 MTVs, they are all something like 25 years old. They are used in support, so obviously they need the replacement quite soon. They are used in support of the Bosnian Armed Forces units that are dedicated for international operations, but they didn't go abroad. But the most obvious and most often role was not made because of some clever military planes, but because of pure natural needs. When there are huge fires during the summer or some floods after the winter, the majority of the role of those helicopters is providing the support to the civilian institutions. So, for example, in the last summer, or in the period since March till September last year, the Mi-8 from Mahovljani and from Rajlovac, they flew something like 236 hours in the fighting fire roles. And there was quite prominent role, you know, and it was obvious every day on the local TVs. As I said, they need a replacement. And really, the MOD has a plan of modernization, which is approved indeed by the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, we know as other countries in the region, the budget is the problem. The percent of the GDP that is dedicated to the military budget in Bosnia and Herzegovina is only 0.9 till up to 1% of the GDP. That's one point. So it's not enough, because also because of the structure of the budget. 80% of the military budget is dedicated to the personnel, by only something smaller than 10% is for the operational costs and some other 10% for some major projects, you know. But probably the most largest problem and the issue about modernization is, of course, the politics. I don't want to get much into it, you know, but because of current structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina with the 3 different national ethnic groups which want to be strong on their political stance, and the structures of 2 entities, we have a problem that Bosnia and Herzegovina don't have a unique idea how to continue in the approach in the future. And the official standing is that the country is on the way to EU and NATO, but in the recent several to 10 years, we have had quite opposition to that idea from one of the entities. And that entity really is not welcoming the idea of strengthening the country itself and its armed forces. And wherever it comes in position to and stronger the armed forces, to enhance it, that side, mainly the Republika Srpska side, is against it. For example, when we have a tender for the to overhaul of the helicopters, it's always some kind of stalling the process, and we always come to the situation that the overhauling is late because of some complaints to the process, with reasons or without reasons, and the helicopters are late to the units, and of course it's less flying hours for the pilots. And with the modernization, there is idea that the country will quite soon have to buy the 2 new medium transport helicopters, and soon also 2 light utility helicopters, later with large numbers. Currently, this is the idea of acquiring 2 medium transport helicopters, and because of composition of fiscal council, if one of the entities is opposing to that idea and doesn't allow the money to be dedicated to it, it will be nothing of the acquiring. So the one who want to sell the large-scale equipment to Bosnia and Herzegovina, he has to be clever, has to be patient and persistent. And it's always the idea I have to have in mind that it's always possibility that the United States government, which is in favor of the strengthening the country itself, would have idea of providing something from the old stocks that they have been back to the United States. And if when you get something from the stocks, then you making the country rely on the US equipment further in the future. So again, gotta be smart, persistent, and patient.
Thank you for this insight. Quite complicated, but nevertheless interesting. Mr. Miloradovic, what will be the concrete impact of the Airbus deal technology-wise? What can translate from the, let's say we'll have the latest avionics system, what will be the, let's say the more practical sides of the technology transfer aspects for our armed forces?
One of them, just to give a little bit more light of, anyway, you have heard that in the General Zoni's presentation. We have an understanding, memorandum of understanding signed by government of Serbia with Airbus Group, which is predominantly was based on technologies and on technological cooperation. Ministry of Defense has been blessed with the opportunity to grasp most of the juice out of this arrangement or agreement, but it doesn't end there. There are other things to be developed between Airbus Group and government of Serbia and Ministry of Defense of Serbia in the future to come. We have a list of things that we should do together, and this was the first step. Of course, we are very keen to see what are the results of this first step and what are the concrete benefits of the government of Serbia. Helicopters and the capabilities related to this it's clear, meaning when we receive the equipment and we integrate everything that we need to integrate on it. Anyway, the time will we are pretty confident that we made a good deal, based on reports that our pilots and our specialists have seen when the aircrafts were presented to them, and we had very high remarks by our Air Force, which was, to summarize, this was get this now. So I assume that they know what they're doing. Generally speaking, one of the aspects of technological cooperation between Airbus Group and these parts of Serbian defense sector, industrial sector, is the package that was just described. And we all know that as General says, we are re-establishing, revamping some of our capabilities. being capable of delivering a part, a single part that you will put into an aircraft. And to our, how should I say, we military engineers, we are normally, you know, as some people will say, have a big ego, and we think, especially in our role in the general progress of technologies as such, and normally we used to think that we have the highest standards, but sometimes, especially in the aviation field, civilian standards overpasses us, and it makes sense when you put the part and you put that in the aircraft, which doesn't stop for 25 years, a machine which is working 24 hours or very intensively for a very long time and carrying some people inside, and if something happens, responsibility is huge, and these standards is something, the recent ones, is something that we are keen on getting. And through this cooperation, we think that we will be getting these kind of technological expertise and production standards, first to start with in our major MRO institution, such as MOMA Stanovic. We intend this not to be to finish there. We intend this to grow further on in the industry, especially in the aerospace industry.
General Zernic, MOMA overhaul facility will get its own overhaul with this deal, new capabilities, some new roles for the maintenance people, some roles will diminish and some will appear because we have the helionics package which may employ some other specialities. How will that transfer occur? The MOD has a strong intention to hire more people, increased wages. What will be that process?
Yes, I think that your question actually going in the one of the major risk area which we are already envisaged. That the human capital is the most important part of every business. I think that you agree all about that. And of course, we discussed the technological side of this project, but we understand in the Ministry of Defense that in order to reach such high level of ambition, we also have to work on the MOMA as a organizational system on the quite different way. And that means that the principles of the internal organization, including the recruitment of the new people and also retaining of the current people there, have to be built on the, I would say, on the completely new way. And one of the major obstacles which we are faced is that actually we have to cope with the traditional mindset, which is a bit autocratic and also which prevent the agility and also efficiency in the process. That means that probably MOMA, which is currently deeply embedded in the structure of the Serbian armed forces, will probably need to be more visible and more market-oriented organization. That will be first step. Probably, that's my personal opinion, that one day MOMA will be company, state-owned company, which will provide full capacity to act on the market principles, but also to the state will protect their investment and their rights in MOMA through the steering board or some other mechanism. But such kind of the organization cannot be on the halfway in some kind of the bureaucratic system, and in the same time the cooperate with the premier market organization. That will be one of the huge task for us, how to resolve this current situation.
Mr. Babeshon, how will you support your newest client here in Serbia in all aspects of the operations of the helicopter?
I'm sorry, but at the moment, Laurent Visa is probably more current on this topic. I'm much more technical, but the support we used to give to our customers is a support which is tuned to the needs of the customer. We are very flexible on the offers we can do for support. typically for Serbia, I was not involved at the beginning of the project and was not part of the project, so I have no definitive answer. What I can give you is a global picture. We are offering with our products some solutions for support, which can be tuned to the needs of the customer, as I told you. First of all, we can offer some training packages, which will allow the customer to get independence within the maintenance of his helicopters. And then we can also ensure some presence along the customer during the life, beginning of the life or all along the life of the helicopter. It will depend on the country, it will depend on the requirements. But if you want more details about the exact Serbian scheme, please go to my colleagues, which were much more involved in the project. I'm sorry.
Thank you, thank you. On that note, we will conclude this panel. It was quite detailed. Thank you all for participating, and in Tango 6 way, we will have even more details on our portal. We're expecting some exclusive statements or possibilities to witness the delivery. And Miloš, thank you.